The Real Agenda of the Gates Foundation by Jacob Levich. Section 3. Gates and Big Pharma. Subheading: Guinea Pigs for the Drug Makers. Despite annual revenues approaching $1 trillion, the global pharmaceutical industry has lately experienced a critical decline in the rate of profit, for which it lays most of the blame on regulatory requirements. A U.S. think tank has estimated the cost of new drug development at $5.8 billion per drug, of which 90% is incurred in Phase 3 clinical trials mandated by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration and similar agencies in Europe. These are tests administered to large groups of human subjects in order to confirm the effectiveness and monitor the side effects of new vaccines and other medicines. The international business consulting firm McKinsey & Company called the situation dramatic and urged Big Pharma executives to, quote, envision responses that go well beyond simply tinkering with the cost base, primarily the relocation of clinical trials to emerging markets, where drug safety testing is seen as relatively cheap, speedy, and lax. It is in this specific context that the BMGF's intervention in the distribution of certain vaccines and contraceptives must be seen. Heavily invested in Big Pharma, the Foundation is well positioned to facilitate pharmaceutical research and development strategies tailored to the realities of the developing world, where, quote, to speed the translation of scientific discovery into implementable solutions, we seek better ways to evaluate and refine potential interventions, such as vaccine candidates, before they enter costly and time-consuming clinical trials. End quote. In plain language, BMGF promises to assist Big Pharma in its efforts to circumvent Western regulatory regimes by sponsoring cut-rate drug trials in the periphery. The instruments of this assistance are Gates-controlled institutions like the Gavi Alliance, the Global Health Innovative Technology Fund, and the Program for Appropriate Technology in Health, PATH, public-private partnerships purportedly devoted to saving third-world lives. Notionally independent, but so heavily funded by Gates as to function as virtual arms of the Foundation, these organizations began to conduct large-scale clinical trials in Africa and South Asia in the mid-2000s. Africa soon experienced an, quote, unprecedented increase in health research involving humans, who were typically, quote, poverty-stricken and poorly educated. The results were predictably lethal. In 2010, the Gates Foundation funded a Phase 3 trial of a malaria vaccine developed by GlaxoSmithKline, GSK, administering the experimental treatment to thousands of infants across 7 African countries. Eager to secure the WHO approval necessary to license the vaccine for global distribution, GSK and the BMGF declared the trials a smashing success, and the popular press uncritically reproduced the publicity. Few bothered to look closely at the study's fine print, which revealed that the trials resulted in 151 deaths and caused, quote, serious adverse effects, e.g., paralysis, seizures, febrile convulsions. in 1,048 of 6,000 children aged 5 to 17 months. Similar stories emerged in the wake of the Gates-funded Men-Afrivac campaign in Chad, where unconfirmed reports alleged that 50 of 500 children forcibly vaccinated for meningitis later developed paralysis. Citing additional abuses, a South African newspaper declared, quote, "We are guinea pigs for the drug makers." End quote. It was in India, however, that the implications of BMGF's collaboration with Big Pharma first rose to widespread public attention. In 2010, 7 adolescent tribal girls in Gujarat and Andhra Pradesh died after receiving injections of HPV, human papillomavirus, vaccines, as part of a large-scale, quote, demonstrational study funded by the Gates Foundation and administered by PATH. The vaccines, developed by GSK and Merck, were given to approximately 23,000 girls between 10 and 14 years of age, ostensibly to guard against cervical cancers they might develop in old age. Extrapolating from trial data, Indian physicians later estimated that at least 1,200 girls experienced severe side effects or developed autoimmune disorders as a result of the injections. No follow-up examinations or medical care were offered to the victims. Further investigations revealed pervasive violations of ethical norms. Vulnerable village girls were virtually press-ganged into the trials. Their parents bullied into signing consent forms they could not read by PATH representatives who made false claims about the safety and efficacy of the drugs. In many cases, the signatures were simply forged. An Indian parliamentary committee determined that the Gates-funded vaccine campaign was, in fact, a large-scale clinical trial conducted on behalf of the pharmaceutical firms and disguised as an, quote, observational study in order to outflank statutory requirements. The committee found that PATH had, quote, violated all laws and regulations laid down for clinical trials by the government in a, quote, clear-cut violation of human rights and a case of child abuse, end quote. The Gates Foundation did not trouble to respond to the findings, but issued an annual letter calling for still more health-related R&D in poor countries, and reaffirming its belief in the, quote, value of every human life. End quote and end of section.